And the panel that we have ahead of us couldn't be more interesting at all. And it has the most interesting people from the airline that you can imagine. Why? Because I was just mentioning, Yugoslavia or ex-Yugoslavia, the ex-Yugoslavian republics, Serbia, Montenegro, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, all of them have become real good players in the global travel industry. Those countries have become hugely popular travel destination among all sorts of travelers, from low budget to high end. And even Tiffany Trump visited at one point Belgrade, and it was a big news. Sorry for that little information, but it was just funny to me how the visit of a politician's daughter can stir up a lot of attention in one town. But it's obvious, that tourism became part of the economy there, and that as soon as somebody's famous visits, people come in. There is a lot of film shooting going on in the Balkans. A lot of those countries give their beautiful scenery or their very picturesque cities as film shooting places. Huge economy, a huge economic value for the city, for the country, and of course, lots of other things. So the unknown all of a sudden became the known, and this is very good. I think it diversifies the travel offer. And one other good thing is that to the unknown, formerly unknown, now known places, you need to get there somehow. And there's been a whole lot airline on the market in a few years, in the last decade. Many new airlines popped up, many old airlines restructured and became new ones, and we have new flag carriers like Air Serbia or like the Montenegrin airline, and Ukrainian Air has become very, very popular to fly. They have good connections. So without further ado, that was my sort of little hint that we are moving into the airline panel. And that's obviously very interesting. We all know why. Airlines have been very hit by the pandemic. It's been very, very difficult for many of them to survive. Some of them didn't make it. The majority has been carrying business over into the next period and trying to do things, trying to do better, trying to do many, many things. I personally have a request. This policy of changing without penalty, please keep it forever. Don't cancel it. Please don't do it. It's become so wonderful. It's become so great. All of a sudden, travel planning has become really, really easy. So I personally, and a lot of other people, I think, would be happy if you would keep that unlimited cancellation or rebooking policy for the rest of our time. But I'm afraid that's one of the things that will go one day. But certainly the business is difficult right now, but also signs for improvement. And to talk about that, we have a very distinguished panel. We have Meir Hadassi Turner from AeroCRS. We have Predrag Todorovic from Air Montenegro. Jiri Marek from Air Serbia, Julio Alejandro Camero from TAG Airlines. We have Yuri Mirosnikov from Ukraine International Airlines, and all of that will be moderated by David Gunnarsson from Dohop. And David, I hope you can hear me now. I hope everybody else is online, and I hope you're going to give us an answer whether rebooking will be free of charge until the end of our time. Gentlemen, the floor is yours, and looking immensely forward to this airline panel.
Thank you, Alex, and certainly can hear you now. Sorry, I had a little bit of trouble with my camera. Thanks to everyone for being here today. It's great to be here. So my name is David. I am from a company called Dohop. We are based in Reykjavik in Iceland, but currently I am, like Meir, in London at another conference. And this is actually the second time this year I'm doing an in-person conference in one place while doing a virtual conference at the same time. So it's a great kind of very interesting landscape that we are in, obviously, as we know. Thanks to everyone for taking the time to be here. I'd like to do, if I may, I'd like to ask for a brief round of introductions from everyone. So just so that we have, because we have a little bit of time here, and I'd like to have a little bit of introduction about, kind of from each one in turn, with a little bit of background, along with an introduction, a short introduction of your company. So if I may start with you, Yuri, because I'll go by my screen, and you're at the top left. So if you would please give us a brief introduction.
Thank you very much. Yuri Mirosnikov, representing here Ukraine International Airlines. I firmly believe it's a national carrier of Ukraine. I'd like to stress it because there are a lot of speculations about the efforts of our government to create new state-owned national carrier. But we have Ukraine International, the company with 29 years of history, being established in 1992 as a national carrier, operating network model, striving and surviving through the COVID pandemic and other circumstances now of various scales of dramaticity. I'm working for 28 years in the airline. I was chief executive officer for 15 years, and last 2 years I'm member of the board, of the supervisory board of this airline. So I had a chance to sit in various chairs and have different angles of view on the situation, and inside and outside. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So, Meir, you're up next.
Thank you very much, David. Hi, everybody. My name is Meir Hadassi. I'm the CEO and founder of AeroCRS. We are a PSS or OMS, as some call it today, system provider for airlines. I started my company 15 years ago, and today AeroCRS hosts 91 airlines worldwide, mostly from the Tier 4 type of airlines. We provide PSS and OMS software, including distribution capabilities and any other services that we provide to the airlines out there, and DC, of course, as well. So I look forward for this panel to see how we emerge from that, from this COVID situation right now.
Very good, thank you. And before I hand over to you, Yuri, I would like to say to the audience that if there are any questions, you can type them obviously into the panel, and we will address them as we go along or at the end. So Yuri, please.
So first of all, hi David, and hi all fellow panelists. My name is Yuri Marek. I'm General Manager of Commercial and Strategy in Air Serbia. Air Serbia is a national airline of the Republic of Serbia, and actually the history and heritage goes to one of the top 10 oldest airline in the world, which started as an airport in a former, let's say, region. So we rebranded as Air Serbia 8 years ago. We had recently our anniversary, but we are very proud on our heritage being one of the oldest in the world and in the region.
Very good, thank you. And finally, Predrag.
Thank you very much, David. Hello to everyone, and very nice transition from what Yuri said, that he represents one of the oldest history. We have a history of a couple of months. It's a completely other direction. So Air Montenegro is a new national airline of Montenegro. As you probably know, there was a previous state-owned company in Montenegro, which unfortunately stopped the operations by the end of 2020. And actually, government decided to create a new airline. That the airline is absolutely important for the country. So in February, we started this project, and we had a goal to start the operation before the summer. So basically, that's what we achieved, and so far we are operating a network as a network schedule carrier, state-owned company of Montenegro.
Very good, well done, by the way. Really good, great achievement. Now, so I'd like to start. We have a lot of things to talk about here. We have plenty of interesting sort of topics, and I think I'd like to kind of start in Air Montenegro again, Predrag, if I may hand over to you. So, if you think about it, what do you see as the, you started, as you say, as a scheduled network carrier, but what do you see as the future for airline business models, and how can sort of smaller players maybe and new players, how can you effectively compete with existing major airlines?
So we realized by launching this project and starting the operations now, actually we realized a couple of things. First of all, I think that majority of the airlines today try to do everything. And we have many airlines in Europe. We have hundreds and hundreds of airlines, and all of them are having their own structures, and all of them are doing everything. it is very hard to be excellent in everything. What does it mean? It means that if you don't reach the excellence in every single thing that you are doing, you're doing it a bit worse. It means it's more expensive for you. It means that somehow, somewhere, you're losing money. And we are doing this, everybody is basically looking for itself only, creating these structures that exist everywhere, and everybody is losing a part of money at the end of the day. So I really think that basically the future may go into the direction of somehow diversification between purely operations and sales and marketing. I think that this is something that can be further developed. I made it really in the simple words, but this is like one of the first observations that I see that's really, namely with a lot of data, a lot of technology and everything, we can in a more stable and higher quality way do the sales and marketing and do what the clients really need, and then the operations on the other side will just execute what is the setup of what we have seen. So, and I don't believe that every single airline has to do every single thing in-house separately, not looking at what's going on the market. If you look, second part of your question about the smaller airlines competing with the big ones, basically you cannot compete on the same field. And that's, I think, as simple as that. Smaller airlines have a couple of objectives and basically, let's say, advantages. First is to look maybe at some niche markets, something which is not maybe interesting for the big companies, but there is some specific need. So basically, smaller airline can serve this. Smaller airline can also, as Air Montenegro, serve as a flag carrier of small countries and basically defend the national interest of the country. So provide essential infrastructure for the country, which goes beyond purely commercial reasons. This is, let's say, third part is that the small airlines should definitely cooperate with the bigger airlines. You have these kind of examples somewhere I would say more developed in the United States than in Europe, but basically somehow to use smaller airlines to serve bigger airlines for some specific needs, to go into the level of the direction of the optimization and the synergies that the market needs.
Amazing. It's actually interesting, if an airline needs to do everything and needs to be expert at everything. I was having this conversation yesterday in terms of technology, because I work for a tech company, and the question is always, does the airline have to be a tech company on its own, or should it be leveraging what other tech vendors can provide for them, etc. So I think depends on who you ask, right? What about you, Yuri? What's your take on that?
Well, I agree with a couple of things which Predrag mentioned, definitely. And what the airlines do is what they do the best, basically transport the people from A to B and transport them there safely. And outsourcing you are doing whenever is economically more beneficial than what you can do in-house. So definitely in terms of the airline system, IT, technology, and these kind of things, you definitely need to follow that pattern, especially if you have a smaller scale. If you are the bigger, maybe it's better to develop your own. But on the other hand, also as a smaller airline, you have certain flexibilities and niche to actually differentiate yourself from the others. So for example, we ourselves now started to develop our own booking system, because basically, you are from technology provider. So all the airline system are quite legacy-based system. So if you want to address, let's say, the needs of the new modern generations, either you wait once those legacy systems will be ready, or you use the opportunity and to develop something from the scratch. And that's what we're currently doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this may, of course, what may influence this and how this moves into the future is possibly what's been happening over the past 2 years in following the pandemic. And if I may hand over to you, Yuri, how do you think that do you think the pandemic will change the landscape here? And do you think it will have an impact on how airlines behave in certain situations like this, and what they choose to do and what they choose not to do?
Well, thank you for the question. Definitely, and pandemic already changed the playing field, and will continue to change. The worst thing for the airlines today is that we don't know. We may only anticipate with various extents of likelihood what will happen and where we will end up, but we already see that market has changed, passenger behavior has changed, passenger preferences changed, competition has changed. If we are talking of competition, probably one basic change which happened is that people, for this now mostly 2 years of pandemic environment, people learned what else to do except traveling, or basically they found the replacement in tools and means, and for example, the way how our conferences is run these days, how many airlines lost passengers in business class, and not only in business class, due to the availability of such technology and due to the fact that it's not necessary to travel. How many hotels lost their residents for this event in Istanbul? And same for leisure traffic. People decided that traveling on the family car, avoiding travel abroad, remaining within your own country, or finding any other hobbies and pleasures could replace to a certain extent the pleasure of travel. So one issue which we shall recognize and understand that in addition to usual competition between the airlines, there is a competition of a very unusual things, of a kind of occupation of people, and for a kind of the alternative means how to achieve your purpose, or how to entertain yourself without actual traveling, where airline could be on your hand. And going particularly to the airlines itself, what changed? Unpredictiveness, both for people and for airlines, unpredictiveness of restrictions, of the borders opening, unpredictiveness of extent of pandemic, and that's all requires from the airline to understand passenger concerns, customer concerns, and to reflect it in its policy. Airline must prove it's a reliable partner, it's a caring partner, it's flexible, talking about all these penalties for the change of the tickets, refunds, etc., etc. It's probably thinking about insurance. So it all gives a certain list, which could be quite long, of additional features of competition, which are adding to normal price, comfort of the cabin, service package, time of travel, etc., etc. So these would be new features. These already are new features, and they will develop. And we don't know where we will end up.
No, that's true. We certainly don't know that, not yet. So over to you, Meir. What's how are you on that note, on the competitiveness, on how airlines are changing, and on Yuri building his own booking engine? What's how do you see this, and how does this fit with what AeroCRS is doing?
So I think first, Yuri, you should talk to us first, because don't go and develop your own system. I see he's dropped off. Yeah. So I think first of all, the airlines from their side, of course, there is a massive change due to the pandemic, that airline needs to be more agile from that perspective, meaning that they need to respond to market needs immediately. As the market evolves and the market has changed, as we can see in the past year and a half or 2 years almost now. So I think there is a pandemic now. The pandemic now, you see an example of this. I might say, for the airline needs to notify the passengers about restrictions, and the airline needs to notify passengers about COVID specific requirements, and all of those things. These are things that the airlines, of course, needs to adapt into. And I think that's one of the things that, for me, when I come to choose an airline, for example, when I fly, I know that one of the airlines that I fly, I will not state names, offer that option as an extra ancillary to have those forms fill out or things like that. So that's something for me as a passenger, I have the ability to choose as an extra service. So that's one of the things that I wanted to state out. That I think from a competitive point of view, there is really a change of how you compete right now. I think that in the past, airlines mostly competed during, using revenue management systems, but this data is almost obsolete right now, because you cannot really project according to past data right now. You need to respond to the market needs. The behavior of people's booking has changed, how people book, from which channels, and also, so that's something that the airlines, from a competitive point of view, they need to change that, how they react immediately to changes.
Absolutely, they certainly do, and I think, as you say, I mean, it's maybe competing on a wider scale, not necessarily just on price and convenience and cabin and the typical things. So maybe on that note, Predrag, because you have the benefit of being in a very new organization and the new maybe the benefit of doing things in a new way. Is this a theme that your organization is working on? Is what can you do to deliver new good things to the customers, and what is your thinking around that?
So that's definitely one of the few advantages of being new and being small. We have a mindset of being actually, we know that we need to be very, very flexible, very agile, and we have to react on what we just discussed now, that the passenger behaviors are changing. It is very, very unpredictable global environment. And just imagine, from our perspective, we are a state-owned company, and we have to basically give reports to the states. We have to make, let's say, 3 years plans to the state. How can you make 3 years plans right now? You don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks. You still have to do it. And basically, in this environment, you really have to be open-minded, flexible. On the other side, what we need from the market are easy-to-adapt solutions. The companies which are providing solutions, and I think Dohop is very much into this mood and doing absolutely this. And I think that we need AeroCRS as well, and we need more companies of the similar mindset that are here to offer very easy solutions for the airlines to use them when they need to jump in, do the solution, and basically go live on the market in a very short period of time. And this is something that we have experienced very much, because just imagine the period from February until June. It's 3.5 months. We have to build everything. We didn't have AOC, we didn't have planes, no distribution, nothing. And basically, and you have a bunch of other airlines which are starting right now in these conditions, because on the other side you have aircraft and some other parts of the infrastructure which are very attractive today because there's a market. So all these providers, I think, will really help these newcomers to start up in a more efficient way and go quickly on the market. And we have to be ready. Everybody has to be ready. The whole system has to be ready to constantly adapt and change.
Exactly. This is actually a kind of along the lines of, I was on a panel yesterday here in London in the World Aviation Festival, and along with somebody from Avianca, and she said, she got the question at the end, and she said, so the moderator asked her the question, what, do you have a message for technology vendors and thinking about speed? And she said, well, we want things faster and cheaper. And that's their message for them, looking towards technology vendors who, airlines are accustomed to paying a lot of money for things that take a long time to develop from a technology perspective. And in no way, when you're trying to launch an airline in 3 months, then that you cannot be traditional or typical in how that's approached. So Yuri, welcome back.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. We talked about some things while you were gone, but just to pick up on the theme, you said you were building your own booking platform. So we'd like to hear about that, I think, a little bit.
Well, I think since you are in London, one of our colleagues is actually on the panel having the full deep presentation on the topic, so right. You can try to catch it up.
Yeah.
But basically, one of the first things what we did when the pandemic started and we've been forced to ground the fleet, we just decided simply to fast track all the things which we were planning as our long-term goals in terms of the digital transformation, let's say distribution strategy and all this. And basically, within few months, we launched our first mobile app, which still keeping the highest rating. And we will so shortly now in December launch a new version of it. And based on that, we also launched the projects using the design thinking method, how to develop basically the booking engine. And basically, the principle is very easy. Like you put yourself in the shoes of the customer, and you do everything from the point of user experience view. You touch the main, let's say, pain points, which usually is actually the search of the flights and document verification, payment, and you try to make them as simple as possible, because that's the simplification and innovation in this field is a fundamental, let's say, for the, I would say, user experience, which will turn potentially to the long-term loyalty.
Exactly. So that's quite interesting, and I think so. What I want to maybe turn over to Yuri is basically, are you so? Well, before I do that, so I've heard two things from airlines. In my role, we speak to a lot of different airlines, and some of them have done exactly what you described, Yuri, where they accelerate things from a digital standpoint. But other ones have said, I spoke to an airline just recently, and they said, well, now we are 2 years behind because the fleet was grounded and everybody was furloughed and they couldn't do anything. So it has, for some, it has helped them speed up and really helped them gain a competitive advantage. But for others, it has, there's now a 2-year backlog in terms of IT development, which they have to kind of try to solve. But I suppose it's different how the approaches are. How about you, Yuri? What has been the UIA's approach in this context?
Well, we face the difficulty, which is, I think, Meir mentioned it, the revenue management system and all our other IT systems, not all other, but a lot of our IT systems, which are based on the historic trends, are absolutely useless now. Our route network was, I would say, destroyed by chaotic closure of the borders and restrictions imposed by various governments depending on the citizenship and passport you have. So we didn't refuse from any of the IT tools and digital systems. We are working on the improvement of our booking engine and our mobile application in order to better serve and sell. Serve means sell ancillaries, which become a quite key issue for the airline revenue. But of course, our systems were designed for different style of operation, for different scope of operation, for different scale of operation, which now creates certain difficulties and even economical discrepancies, which pushes us towards renegotiating the conditions. Sometimes suppliers are flexible and understand the situation. Sometimes they're not flexible enough, which leaves us very unhappy. But again, this is the reality. Some services we understand we probably would not need. And the already mentioned revenue management system is probably one of the best examples that if it will be useful again, that will happen after at least 1.5 years of normal, stable operation where it can recollect its historic data, reliable, relevant for the situation. Whether we will have a chance of such stable operations or life will continue like this now with the chaotic closures, opening of the borders and various travel restrictions, it may lead to the situation where airlines will recognize classical approach with revenue management systems as useless and will demand system providers, vendors, inventors to do something else, to offer something else, to replace traditional approaches. In general, I think a lot of traditional approaches must be reviewed in the course of these pandemic restrictions if we'd like to learn the lessons.
Absolutely, and kind of picking up on that regarding destinations and networks, and is there, I guess, just to kind of bring that back to you, Yuri, do you think that in terms of networks and restoring that, are there things that have permanently changed? Are there things that will not go back to the way they were in terms of where and how airlines fly and what customers they serve, or will all of them try to come back to what they know from pre-pandemic times?
Well, I think basically the intent and hope is that we all can come back to the pre-COVID, pre-pandemic times. We, as the airline based in Ukraine, have our own unfortunate issues related to the restrictions to operate and fly the airspace of our biggest and nearest neighbor, Russian Federation, which makes certain difficulties, operational difficulties for certain routes, which probably will not return into operation until this conflict is resolved. But from the COVID point of view, from the pandemic point of view, I don't see any blackouts which would say that destination will never return, that principle will never return. But the whole network model is under stress and at risk, because if this system of restrictions by passport, by citizenship, if this approach from the governments all over the world to close and open the borders when they decide there is a reason to close, or now there is a reason to open, that basically destroys any network and pushes your thinking towards point-to-point operations, which are more predictable and more reliable. And at least if you close destination ABC, it doesn't affect X, Y, Z and any other destination, because it's only point-to-point destination. So that is a risk for the network model in general. And other risk is business segment of travel, because I think various businesses, various segments has differently suffered from economic consequences of pandemic crisis. But I would say, except of pharmaceutical, probably all others really suffered. They all have to cut their costs, and they all will review significantly their travel policies, their restrictions of whatever class of service, expenses for the travel, and by all means they will try to push the companies, the management, to that sort of tools which we are using now, instead of travel, which is obviously more expensive than online contacts and online conference. So that, again, that was the core profit source. Business segment was core profit source for the network carriers. The needs of business travelers, whether they travel in front cabin or in the back cabin, but they have specific needs, was in the center of the attention, because they were high-paying, high-yield passengers, and in order to compensate for the low-yield passengers, you have to satisfy them first of all. Now that might be changed, and that approach could be changed to the concentration on the leisure segment, because leisure segment, I think, will restore quicker, faster, and although there are alternatives way how you can entertain yourself, the willingness to travel will not disappear. And as soon as people will get affordable sources of income, and restrictions will fall down, or there will be compensations for these restrictions and uncertainties in airline approaches, people will travel back for the private reasons, which means leisure traffic, and probably the review of your modeling, of your pricing approaches, of your network, of your destinations should concentrate around this market segment. Whatever model you operate, network or low cost or point to point.
Exactly. Thank you. I want to follow along that network theme a little bit with the other two airlines, but I'd like to quickly ask you, turn it over to Meir for a bit. Yuri was talking about cost cutting and vendors having to be flexible. How has that been for you, Meir? Have you had to be flexible, and are you open to that?
First of all, AeroCRS is always flexible, so I think this is something. I think for cutting costs, I think most of the airlines that we have on board during the pandemic, or first of all, our pricing is very low, and I think we are talking about agility and talking about things that needs to change in the industry as far as IT is concerned. As Yuri mentioned, this is something, I think we are the only company that our pricing is available online. We are like a Salesforce or Zendesk company that is doing as a PSS or OMS for the travel industry. So that's something that, yes, we have, of course, been flexible with the airlines and provided discounts if needed during the non-operations period of the airlines. And yes, we've been really thoughtful with them as well. And I think, again, that contributes to the long-term growth that we have, because our perspective is always that if the airlines uses AeroCRS and likes what they use AeroCRS and are willing, and continues to be a very, let's say, good customer and an ambassador, this is something that is fruitful for them and is also fruitful for us. The majority of the innovation that we do as part of our development process to enable airlines comes from the airlines themselves. An example I can give in that perspective, we have an airline in South Africa, which is, it's called Lyft. It's a brand new airline that is flying Cape Town to Johannesburg. What they have done is they have prepared, using our tools, a wallet in their website, meaning that people can not, if they want to either change their route or change their dates or get a refund, it drops into their wallet. So basically they have a wallet, and that's innovation from my end. As being as AeroCRS, the ability to provide that innovation capability to the airline, that's what we are doing. So and I think that most of the airlines, by the way, as Yuri and Predrag also mentioned about the fact that the legacy IT systems are a little bit outdated, I have to say. And all of the bigger airlines are doing is providing on top a layer of a booking engine on top of the inventory management. But I think things change from the core of that, not only from the top layer of the passenger service, because we see the need in OTAs and meta search engines also to provide that service and be more connected to the airline in order to provide the passengers a full journey in that aspect.
Okay, very good. Now, coming back to the network, the network question and how that's going to develop. Over to you, Predrag, in terms of building a new airline, and then where do you go from there in terms of what network, what routes do you go after, and where and how do you build? And I mean, of course, there's two ways, right? You can either build a network or you can borrow one. So that's a good partnerships model. What's the approach here in terms of looking ahead?
So approach of Montenegro is one part of that, what you mentioned, and the other part is, and I'll be back to that. And the other part is, as you may know, Montenegro is very much touristic destination with extreme seasonality. So during, let's say, half year, we have a lot of traffic from all over Europe and many, let's say, emittive touristic markets. Whereas in the other part of the year, this market completely disappears, and Montenegro itself is very, very small market. So it's very hardly sustainable on the long term. So in that regard, basically, the national airline should really serve as a on the other side, the geographic position of Montenegro is very specific, that we are basically the air destination. So we have to have all this in mind when we build our network and when we focus on what are our priorities. So in the summertime, we really want to contribute to this tourism market, which de facto exists here in Montenegro. But when you look at at the ability of small airline to develop its network, the long-term strategy. I really think what we all need is this kind of new virtual interlining. I think this will really help us be much more efficient and go much quicker. Because what exists today? Today exists that, as you mentioned, if we manage to, I don't know, we have to have appropriate systems in order to connect with some other airlines and in order to do this kind of, let's say, traditional interlining and code shares and all that. And if you don't have that, what's the solution? You will still be flying at the airports where the other airlines are operating and we don't cooperate together. And there is a huge amount of waste in terms of seats, in terms of possibilities that is absolutely not used. So basically what I really believe that's going to happen is that this virtual interlining will allow smaller airlines and the airlines which have all the legacy systems and which already do all the code shares, interlines, whatever they do, but still there is a big portion of the market which is not used, and I hope that the technology will allow for all of us to open the whole new world of opportunities and the routes and the connections and everything that will basically go into direction at one side, provide the airlines more flexibility and more opportunities, bring more passengers. On the other side, looking from the environmental point of view and from the long-term objectives and sustainability and all that, will reduce waste and which really exists today.
Absolutely, I think the opportunities for connectivity certainly are there. They just need to be, sometimes they need to be seized, right? How about you, Yuri? How do you approach that? I mean, in terms of, and do you think your network has changed permanently, and how will it come back, and when will it come back?
Well, I would say this is a very interesting question. We can spend a lot on this one because COVID definitely changed completely the network planning approach, because you don't anymore do the really long-term planning, as also Predrag mentioned. I mean, you still have to make the 3 years, 5 years plan, but in a way, it's a very, let's say, exercise which you will keep changing and adapting as external inputs will be. And network was always driven by the demand, and the demand is actually the one which is mostly now affected by the pandemic, and it's fluctuating in both ways. It's either restricted whenever you have new travel restrictions, or it's also, let's say, you have the spikes in the demand when something open, because people still want to travel, as Yuri mentioned, and they will always want to travel. So the question is how quickly you can adapt to these changes in the demand, especially with the network, where what we still observe through the whole pandemic, that the booking window is basically 8 to 10 days to departure, where you get the majority of the booking. So how you can live in that environment, make some midterm or long-term planning. So you basically, what we had to change completely is the way we operate internally. We do the network review every single day, sometimes even twice a day, and basically monitoring the booking on basically daily basis. And wherever we see some spikes of the demand, we are adjusting our capacities accordingly. Of course, in a hub and spoke model, it's super difficult because you are not just going after point to point. However, we strongly believe that we will stay in a hub and spoke model because it's one of the way how to address your seasonality. What Predrag mentioned, we have very similar issue here, maybe not that extreme as in Montenegro, but still the seasonality is pretty high between summer and winter. And in a hub and spoke model, you can in a way address and create the decent loads also in the off season. But for that, you need to have the decent connectivities and frequencies, which is in a pandemic pretty difficult. So what we implemented is we just concentrate on some of the strong days like Monday, Friday, Sunday, where we have almost a level of operation like we had before the pandemic in order to provide that connectivity. And we significantly reducing, the weekdays, which were traditionally always weak even before pandemic, which is like Tuesday, Wednesday, allocating all the maintenance issue on those days and, other things which normally you need to assure that on the strong days you will have the full asset available and full resources available to basically deliver your product. So I think it's changed fundamentally. Also, let's say the reaction on the market is key. So if you want to open the new destination, you are not anymore doing 3-4 months, planning, calibration, different GDPs, inputs, and so on. You basically see the opportunity and you do and go after it. And we proved that during the pandemic, we actually opened a couple of new destinations, and some of them we've been able to open in the course of the 2 weeks. So it's definitely changed. And I think it will stay maybe next 3-5 years in this kind of, let's say, a flexible mood where you will still need to react very fast on all the changes coming.
Yeah, it's incredible to see airlines, working this quickly. I didn't know it was possible until kind of being forced into it, I suppose.
Well, that's, if I can add, that actually I think the biggest undiscovered truth of the COVID, that the change is possible and the speed of change is actually incredible, because not only for us, but I mean, if you look at some unthinkable things like working remotely or working from home before COVID was something which especially like the millennials and generations that wanted to always do, but the corporates were not ready to listen or adapt. And just, the COVID made it from one day to the other new reality. And this will most likely stay even after the COVID and create new customer group, because this nomad lifestyle and nomad way of working will be super attractive for this kind of generation.
Absolutely.
And if I may, David, before you go on, just to build on what Yuri just said, is it's also one very strange thing is that the airlines, which have very traditional systems and everything is slow and so on, are able to react so quickly. And as Yuri said, able to open destination in 2 weeks and run it actually, and to have some interesting numbers. When you look from our perspective, we didn't even know when the airline will start operations. So for us, the day when we open the sales until the day of our first flight, so this period of commercialization of when you talk about, okay, we are, promotion and all that, this period from when we start until the first flight, it was 10 days. And it was, so 10 days before our first flight, nobody knew that we will start. And then you start. And at the end of the summer, on certain amount of routes, we even have I don't know, load rates of more than 80% on some routes and so on. Of course, it's not the case in the winter time. But what I want to say here is that there will be more and more cases like this. And from the airline perspective, what we really need are all the possible tools, and this is mainly technological tools, which will help us when we make these decisions, that these decisions are executed in the most efficient way. And I think the whole industry should really think into this direction, because this is not what happened now and will never happen again. I think that this is something that the airlines will have to, this will be the way of thinking. And I think the whole industry actually have to go into this direction.
Absolutely. And just to kind of bring back on that point, I mean, as you say, it's about launching quickly, but it's about also what you can sell. So if we think about, first of all, it's doing it at speed and possibly lower cost, but then also generating more revenue, and ancillary revenue plays strongly into that. So what do you think about that, Predrag? I mean, is that something that you see you're being more innovative on what else you can sell aside from air and seats and bags and the typical things?
Of course, absolutely, and we have to think into this direction. And once again, as you mentioned, what we have to think is you go back into customer perspective and see what he would like to have. But on the other side, you're coming back to what I really said at the very beginning. Are we gonna in-house? Are we gonna do all these services? Are we gonna create it? And if we start creating every single service, it will be waste of. It will not be the best. So we need all the possible tech solutions in order to offer at the end of the day one passenger experience that it's gonna be branded by us but provided by many providers.
Absolutely. So maybe on that note, over to you, Meir. What are the innovations? How can you help? What are we doing to move airlines forward in order to help them being agile and really quick and doing some innovative things on how they can generate more revenue?
Yeah, so in that perspective, I think this is something that, as Predrag said, this is something that we have invested quite a lot in the past few, I think, year and a half already. And what we have created is basically a marketplace for the airlines that we host, and their capability is just to go into a marketplace and add additional affiliates or within the booking journey, optional for a non-airline revenue ancillary, such as example, SIM cards, insurance, baggage transfers as well. so many things that are incorporated into the booking process, which gives the airline, basically, it's within the airline booking process. The passenger doesn't need to go away from the airline website, whether it's car rental and so on. As long as it's within, we need to control. I think that's what we are saying to all the airlines. I think all the airlines need to understand that there is much more than just the flight that within a passenger itinerary. Not just, of course, your flight and other flights, or there is a lot of things that we can do and we can accommodate as the providers of that specific option within that passenger bucket. Now, sorry, I don't know if you hear the plane roaring above me, so sorry for that.
Nice noise.
Yeah. Everybody likes that noise.
Yes.
It's fine.
Yeah. So basically, that marketplace is allowing the airline, again, to add on to their passenger experience in one hand, but also not to be responsible in the terms of supplying the service.
Yeah.
And that, I think, it's a win-win situation for the airline that is enabling that. We had one airline, for example, that activated insurance as an offer within the passenger journey, and they were surprised that almost 30% of their bookings started, almost 30% of their passengers started adding insurance during the booking process. So those tools are out there, especially now when we are here in the World Aviation Festival. There are many suppliers, many startups that are doing, either insurance, and I had a few meetings yesterday with a few, and we are connected to, for example, to Hepstar, which is a company from South Africa that are doing quite amazing things in the terms of connectivity. So the tools are out there. It's only an API at the end of the day, just to connect to those tools and offer your passengers a way of your passengers an additional experience, or for your airline to generate more revenue. I just had a meeting. We are just in the process of implementing car trawler into our ecosystem as well. And those are things that we need the option. And not only, by the way, not only during the passenger booking journey, also in the emails that we send them, also in the past booking experience, those things that need to be enabled to, as an airline offering, because you've got the passenger. I won't say it's a captive user, but you've got the passenger that is buying. Let's monetize those events as well in order to gain more profit on that specific passenger and supplying with a better experience.
Absolutely, and certainly, I think that at least from where I'm sitting, the right way to think about it is almost like creating a marketplace, or it's like the Amazon B2B marketplace, where Amazon provides the platform, and most of what they sell is actually from their business marketplace, from their B2B marketplace. I think that's really interesting. I also heard a bit of a talk yesterday about personalization, and this has been a topic that's been around, kind of hanging around a little bit, in terms of the ancillaries and how you sell ancillaries, and how you make the decision what ancillaries to offer to which passenger in each case, and being smart about that. Sometimes even using deep learning or sort of AI mechanisms and things like that. I think that can be really interesting. But Yuri, to hand over to you on a little bit on ancillaries and your approach and your strategy there. I mean, has that changed? Is that changing, or do you see it changing?
Did you mean me or Yuri? I'm not sure now.
Yes.
Yuri,
You.
Yeah.
Me. Okay. The name sounds very, very similar.
Actually, it's the same name. It's the same name.
It's the same name. Yeah, I think it's the same name, just different transliteration.
Yeah.
Well, we started to work with ancillaries in 2014 after our major local crisis here in Ukraine, when we have huge drop of passenger traffic, and we're forced to reduce prices in order to attract demand, and then somehow compensate that drop in the yields by additional revenue. It's a long story, but at this moment of time, we are open to sell everything and anything on the ancillary stream, but we also understand what is more popular and what is less popular. So the most popular things are related still to your check-in process, I would say. It's automated check-in, it's choice of seat, it's buying extra bags, etc., etc. Less popular would be things related to food. In our case, at least, everyone has own experience, but in our case, it's less. Car rental is not very popular, while insurance is quite popular. Selling the insurance. One of the problems is really mental problem with the passengers. The passengers must become used to this concept that they're not buying now all-inclusive ticket where everything is bundled and you have a lot of things included, but you can't have anything else which is not included. So they should get used to the concept that you basically at the first stage you only buy transportation from A to B, and then it's up to you how you like to see it. And this is a slow process as everything. We were talking about fast changes in the times of COVID, but change of people's mentality and habits is relatively slow process. Also, I read recently that it happens quite quickly in half a year, and that new habits already established because of the 2 years of pandemic. Maybe yes, but not 100% would rely on that. So changing the habit is very important, and to change the habit, to make things in terms of sales of ancillary easy, simple, quick, and attractive. Here is we are going back to the systems. Systems should support that, and it's not always easy because with the tickets you have a straightforward process. You have your inventory, flight numbers, seats, you have reservation system, you have distribution systems. That's it. With ancillaries, you have unlimited, unexpected choice of options to be sold, and how to squeeze all of them into the system, into the algorithm, and make this algorithm acceptable and clear for understanding of various kinds of customers, types of personalities, various generations. That's the task for Meir and his colleagues, I believe, but also including the marketing people from the airline. Coming back to what Meir was saying, I'd just like to add one view or angle. The airline sites, which are normally, and it was traditional approach of the last decade, I would say, we're selling these ancillaries in the process of booking. So you travel to ABC, what about hotel there? What about car rental or airport transfer? And for instance, while you're traveling, what about food, etc., etc.? And probably now, especially when people are quite hungry for travel, you as an airline, you first must motivate them and inspire to travel in general. So you should assume they're not ready to buy ticket from ABC to XYZ. You should encourage them to travel from ABC to XYZ by somehow promoting the travel, promoting the attractiveness of destinations, etc., etc., and then sell ticket, and then on top of this start selling all the ancillaries. And most of the airlines are still selling ticket plus little something on top of the ticket.
Yeah. So really be a part of the decision-making process and a part of the inspiration for
inspired decision to travel, motivated. Sorry, another 30 seconds from Predrag. This summer I visited Montenegro first time. And why? Simply because all my favorite destinations have been restricted by COVID, border closures, etc., etc., and Montenegro was open. So that was my my motivation and my inspiration to travel because it is open. But somebody highlighted for me that, hey, that countries, they're all closed. Montenegro is open. Go there. Thank you.
Very good.
If I may ask a question for just as a follow-up, and Yuri mentioned, Yuri, do you think that we have to motivate passengers right now to travel? Because and I think that we have seen that also even with this business travel that I'm just doing, during this Omicron variant. Do you think that there is a place for the airlines to think about the pricing mechanism, that they know that they will make extra money from extra ancillaries and therefore encouraging people to travel by lowering the price of the flight? Even for the bigger airlines, I'm not talking low cost only.
No. Yes, I think it's absolutely true. This is the reality how airlines should behave, because still, in whatever processes we are talking, when we inspire passenger to travel, his first question will be, how much does it cost to travel? And if you tell him it's $500, it doesn't sound attractive. But if you tell him it's 100, maybe. What I have then, he asked next question, what I have for this $100? I have a transportation basically between A and B. Well, what if I'd like to eat? That will be $150. But for instance, you will have seat choice, you will have extra bag for that price, and you start negotiating that process. So yes, you have to invent, prepare, design a set of ancillary services and ancillary products, and calculate your ticket price as attractive as you can, and then try to motivate passenger to buy as many ancillaries as possible. And for instance, for ancillaries, again, normally airlines are behaving like they're doing fixed price. Your seat will cost, window seat will cost you €5 or dollar. Your aisle seat will cost you this and that and that. Maybe on Sunday one price, on Wednesday, on weekday or Tuesday another price. Maybe in peak summer is one price, in low season, in deep winter, February or something. And on certain destination, if you travel from a snowy and frosty Canada to Caribbean islands in winter, you might probably increase the price of ancillaries, of seat selection, of bags and everything, because people would like to travel. So keep them low ticket price, but play with the ancillaries. But then it generates the question about revenue management in ancillaries. So it becomes too complicated. But as idea, as direction of thoughts, I think it's a reasonable idea.
David, if I may react.
Please.
I think that we are still in this discussion, like, ancillary and air tickets and prices and so on, going a bit in a circle, because the true personalization, what you mean, I believe, is actually that you know your customer and you know his price sensitivity. I mean, each of us has some, let's say, friendly neighborhood, I don't know, bakery or grocery, that they know you. When you go there, you don't need to ask the price of the bread, because you know the price by heart, and they know you, and they usually already prepared. And they will tell you in advance if the price will change and get your feedback, what you think about. So, and that's actually what the true personalization should be about, because that will be the true retailing. As long as we will try to play the balance between the air ticket and additional ancillary, which usually in legacy airlines sitting in different departments, the departments will be chasing the different KPIs. You will be trying to maximize your ancillary, and your salespeople will be pushing airfares down in order to attract the demand. But at the end of the day, what is important is the net value from the customer. And that will be the true personalization, because you have multiple revenue streams. It's not just airfare, let's say, ancillary. You have onboard, let's say, sales, you have claims. And if you will go with the traditional approach that, let's say, you have last seat, which traditional approach tend to give it to the highest paying airfare passenger, let's say, which give you €300, that passenger later on might claim that he was not satisfied with the flight. You give him goodwill compensation, maybe $50 back. And then you might refuse another passenger which wanted to pay just 200, but will pay the seat, bag, buy some onboard perfume, and so on. So and this is also going back to technology, because we have the patchwork of different systems which hardly communicate together. It's high integration costs. It brings the complexity, and it's making impossible for the legacy airlines to actually see the net value of the customer on one spot, and especially when he already approached you on the first touch point. And that's, I think, where we should head. That we will start to recognize the money which passenger bringing you all together in one journey, and then multiplicate it to the lifetime value of that customer. Because in the same way, you might have somebody who is traveling with you every single week, and you might again have the last seat, which you will tend to maximize for highest buying passenger, where the price sensitivity of the other guy is maybe half of that. And you might push him to search alternative and go to the competition and destroy the lifetime value you can get from that guy. So it's like true personalization is actually not, all these buzzwords we are talking on the conferences. Is first to really understand what you already have in the airline, make it transparent and visible on one, let's say, spot, that you can really understand your own data before investing in all the other, let's say, AI and other things. So, and that's, all linked in one circle.
Absolutely. And I think, airlines certainly have a lot of data, as you say, but it's in disparate systems, and it's really getting all of that together and putting it to use, to actually make it, super useful. That I think that's where the value is in having that data. Just having it is not really helpful if you can't really leverage it. Predrag, any thoughts on this?
What I liked, what Yuri said from Ukraine, what he said is that the booking process is the process of negotiation with the passenger, and it's really it really catch. It was really interesting, and I think you can do this well in every negotiation you do. You can do it well and very efficiently if you know and if you control the whole process. If you know your passenger, if you know what is really the value that you're offering, and so on. And just interesting thought on that.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting way to put it. It's a negotiation throughout the booking flow, really.
But try to make it in indirect channel.
Yeah.
David, really coming to your question about the data warehouse that airlines got, I think that most of the airlines that we have talked to and understand their BI processes is that a lot of the data is sometimes okay. The data is what the board needs, as Predrag just said. Okay, let's try to forecast. Let's see what is the P&L. And not a lot of the data, and the revenue management system, they have their own data. But I think that coming from, sorry to say, but my past was Domino's. I was Domino's Pizza CTO, and in our BI back then we had so much other information, football games, weather, seasonality, a lot of things that are, as long as you have that data in the data warehouse, and this is something, and other than just commercial and lifetime value of a customer, which is, I think, one of the important things that we need to see. But if we cater into all that data and then understand, okay, and then we can really forecast things, even within with the situation that we've got right now, which is very unknown, because as much as data as we can get, and there is a lot of data predictions, business analysts will just love to do this analyzing for the foreseeable futures. We all know that right now our passenger booking rate is at max 60 days ahead at the moment. Well, we've got those 5% that are booking more than 60 days ahead at the moment. We see that in all airlines. Most of the bookings are coming only in the last 60 days prior to the flight. So that's something that we do need to understand. Okay, how do we predict for the next 60 days? And for the next 60 days, if all the airlines will get data, I think that's a major tool for analysis.
Absolutely. So I think we've covered a lot of topics here, and we have a little bit more time. But so I wanted to address maybe as a final kind of final thoughts question in a wide context to the airlines, and we've touched on this, right? And we've touched on how we're still in the pandemic. It's still continuing to go up and down and open and close and restrictions and orders, all of these things. But there's certainly, we've talked about business travel and how that is still kind of missing, and leisure will be resurrected sooner, etc. And if we start with Predrag, how long can airlines survive without the return of long haul, without the return of business travel?
Well, it depends on the profile of the airline and what they do. So, for example, for us, long haul is not, let's say, top priority contributors to the success or not. On the other side, we have to be we are at the starting phase right now, so we are still, let's say, flexible, and we are able to adapt to the current market conditions. However, as the airline grow, as they kind of create their strict processes with ways of behavior and so on, they become more agile and more adaptive to this. So I think that this is something that we have to keep in mind all the time. This openness, we have to play with the data. This is absolutely important, and with the helps of all these things that we discussed today, with the virtual interlining, with the with finding a way of synergies, connections between the airlines, reducing the costs wherever is possible on the operational side, understanding perfectly your markets and playing this positioning yourself in that regard. National companies, national airlines working with the governments to very, very closely with the governments to basically play the part of the government's infrastructure, of the interest of the country, and so on and so on. So basically, you put all these contributors to one place, and this will help you to go longer. This will help you to be more efficient and go longer. If you don't think about all that, and if you're just thinking like from your own box, not looking what's going on around, it's going to be very, very tough. And we absolutely, I think it's not the way of behavior which will help the airlines. So openness, connectivity, synergies, optimization, and perfectly understanding where you are, why you exist, what are your goals at the end, what are your customers, and all that.
Like it. So, Yuri, Air Serbia?
Look, I think that if we're starting with a question like how we will return what it was before pandemic, we are already basically taking it from the wrong end, because I think that sooner we will realize that the world change, the market change, customer change, and we will start to adapt and evolve into it. We will be the winner, because it will not return, in my view. It will definitely change many things. And you can see the simple things, like when the pandemic started, we as an industry were everybody, hashtagging like we are in this together, phrasing the support to each other and so on. And you are already now, let's say, in the second year of the pandemic, and you see the suppliers, increasing double-digit prices. Those which be monopoly before pandemic, and they are still monopoly. They don't care anymore that we are in this together, and some increases of the charges or let's say the supplier demand is incredible. So if you will be, let's say, sticking to how you can return to pre-pandemic, you will be gone, because the price level in the new normal will be totally different than pre-pandemic. So you need to just accept that the world change, and you need to be flexible, agile, and adapt into it as a normal human evolution. You need to constantly, every day be better than the day before. That's the way forward.
Absolutely. Yuri, on your thoughts on this?
I somehow will repeat what a few minutes ago Yuri said from Serbia, that understanding your customer, I think, well, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly that it's a wrong task, wrong objective to plan, wait, and think when we will return to pre-pandemic situation. We sometimes definitely will return to pre-pandemic volumes. That's for sure. But we will not return to pre-pandemic market situation, pre-pandemic travel habits, etc., etc. We have to understand our customers. That's the key. If airline understands its customer, and second key point is able to respond, is able to match and exceed customers' expectations, it will survive. And it does not matter whether it's long haul or short haul, because long haul may kill the airline, may save the airline. The key issue is to understand the customer. and being able understanding without reaction is nothing. So understand, react, match expectations and exceed expectations. Then with whatever market conditions, you will survive. Thank you.
Very good. So Alex has just joined us. We have a couple of questions from the audience. Meir, any thoughts on this question, even though you're not working for an airline?
No, I totally agree with the representatives from the airlines and also from our airlines that are working with us as well. We do see a passenger behavior change in the past time, and this is what I think changed. Passengers are more eager to do things online. They are more eager to do things on their own, to understand how it works. They are more open to innovation, whether it's virtual interline, that people, they now understand what is self-connect and what they need to do if they are booking an interline booking or a virtual interline booking. So the passengers changed, and we need to understand that, and we need to evolve in order to respect their requirements.
Absolutely. So Alex, do you have audience questions for us?
Yes, I do actually. I was totally shocked. It came through another channel, not on this one, but let's say it came through another. And the question is addressed to the three gentlemen running the airline, and it's a little bit from another angle. Let me formulate it so that it's really understood. So we have, and she asks, how seriously do as an airline, as executives, the head of the airlines, take mails, complaint?
Can't hear.
No. We lost you.
No.
Yeah, we lost you a little bit.
Okay. What about now?
Yeah.
Not at all.
There is a lot of echo.
Okay. Not at all. Okay. I will type question in.
No.
No.
Not really.
Okay. I'm typing the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Yes, that's a good question. So the question we have from the audience is, how seriously do you take complaint emails or mails? And do they reach you? So do you see complaint emails, and how seriously do you take them? How do you address them? So shall we begin with Jiri from Air Serbia?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the complaints can be positive and negative. So I would rather call it feedback from the customer. And what is actually important to understand, like when the pandemic came, nobody expected the volume of the emails, calls, and everything you get. You basically, nobody was ready, in a scale in which came and the speed. So obviously, first things we started to do to reallocate internal resources and put as much as we can. Obviously, I mean, no secret that you can't do it from the day one, to reallocate more resources to that. And we paid big attention to it. But what is important to mention is that you as an airline are always like first face to the customer. They don't understand the differences. Like, if they book the ticket from A to B, they don't understand that you are the airline which is taking them. They put in the same basket the handling, the airport, the border control, security, restriction. So a lot of complaints is actually kind of addressed to you as an airline, but you are the end and the value chain which actually can influence it. Because of, for example, I cannot travel because I'm not admitted to travel to the destination because I need this and this documents. Can you validate if this is correct? And all this is like big jungle these days, because even sometimes embassies has a different information than the border police or sends the thematic. So this like document verification is now really big pain point. So that's basically, but you still need to answer that. You cannot just simply tell to the customer, like, it's not our problem. So you are our customer. So you try to help. You try to address the customer to the proper touch point. You try to constantly educate them, like keep checking your travel restriction in a final destination, close to your departure, and so on. Obviously, as you mentioned, Alex, at the beginning, one of the things to address the complaints was to implement the free change, because the amount of the changes and cancellation is simply impossible to manage. And the biggest benefit now to the customer is to have this, let's say, free mind that, whatever happened, I can still, use my ticket in different time, which on the other hand put a lot of pressure on your planning back there. So yes, there are a lot of backlogs on the emails and on the customer claims, but it's super important to address them even more than you did before pandemic, because now if you are closer to your customers, they will be closer to you after we are out of this.
Mm-hmm. And the follow-up to this that Alex has put here in the chat to us, whether it's at all useful to write, or is it better to post publicly, on Twitter or LinkedIn and use that as a kind of a more public method to contact the airline?
Look, the one thing which is critical is, like, if you don't have, again, back to technology, if you don't have end-to-end connection in your CRM systems, a lot of people which cannot reach you on the call centers, they send you the email. So you create the backlog on both, and because you don't respond, they call you back to the call center. So you have, like, this kind of loophole of increased volume, which at the end is maybe unique customer. Then of course you have the social media as another channel. So this is all in a way connected, and even more it's important that you manage this properly.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Predrag? Is there a lot of feedback in the first few months of operation?
Absolutely, yes. And this is, of course, that all these complaints and, as Yuri said, feedbacks actually come to us. What is very important is that we take them very seriously in a constructive way, because these are our passengers, and they have to. We have to take this really, really seriously. What we have at the very beginning, at the very start of phase, is that you already know that you will receive some kind of complaints, because you are starting up and you know that not all your services are here in place, and you're ready for that, and you basically prepare how to handle that. This is one thing, and the second thing is actually the complaints which are coming for everyday's operations, and you deal with them in a different way. So that's it. Regarding this posting on Twitter or LinkedIn and on social media, writing. What I think is that basically you will, in majority of cases, have these negative feedbacks, in these channels, whereas you will not have that many positive emails on that. If everything is good, nobody talks about it. If there is a problem, then if you don't have a proper way of managing all these complaints, then you go public, you announce it, and then the airlines will react or whatever. So that's why I think that we as an airline, we have to basically build confidence also in this way of treating these complaints.
Absolutely. How about you, Yuri? How is this addressed at Ukraine?
Well, it's addressed seriously. I personally always considered, when I was executive, I was always considered it quite seriously, and I would say I highly appreciate constructive complaints, positive feedbacks, of course, too, but even complaints, if they're constructive, because this is first of all, it's a chance for improvement, and this is the chance which customer gives you. Because if customer doesn't want to give you a chance, he is not complaining, he's just leaving. Even now, when I am not in the executive role, from time to time, I'm still receiving complaints and feedbacks via email and, for instance, via LinkedIn. And I react, but at the top, being chief executive, being board member, of course, your reaction is to handle it to appropriate division in the airline, and then to control that things are really done, and the answer is fair and timely and effective, etc., etc. And I'm afraid you can't do it individually for every complaint. You just can have a system which ensures it works in the airline. Yes, I'm not in Twitter, but yes, I'm from time to time receiving complaints and feedbacks via LinkedIn. It's okay, but I think what happens then, I just handle and email it once again to the respective customer service department for appropriate handling and appropriate responses in the system. So I would rather say that Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever social measure is the way how you can punish the airline for lack of response, mainly, rather than really consider it as a constructive approach, send it or post it in the social media and sit down and wait until the response. No, that's not the way.
Okay, very good. I think that's an excellent way to put a final point on the back of this panel. We've covered a lot of interesting topics and great discussion. Thank you everyone for taking the time to be here. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor for me to be allowed to join this esteemed group of people here. So thank you for that, and I'll hand over to you, Alex.
Yes, and thank you, David. And may I just have a feedback whether I can be heard now?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great, because I want to make that finishing touch. The Molly probably meant what she was trying to say is that complaining publicly is more effective than just writing into an info address at some email, and you get a reply, if you have received your complaint, and we will respond to you. And of course, when you take it out on LinkedIn among your thousands of followers, or on Twitter, of course it has an effect, or it's said to have an effect, that the airlines would respond faster. And if I might say from personal knowledge, some airlines do that really faster if you bash them out publicly, but they're not represented on this panel. So, gentlemen, you've got all credit for you going for you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This has been highly interesting, and thank you for all of you for taking the time. Regards to Montenegro, to Serbia, to Ukraine, and to all the other cities where you are. And we'll be right back. We'll take a 3-minute break. We'll be right back. Thank you, David, for the excellent moderation, and to all of you, very good business, and hopefully a better 2022. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.